Today, we're diving into a story that feels like a classic David versus Goliath tale, but for our modern times. It's all about how one community, a single town, decided to take on one of the biggest, most powerful companies in the world. And somehow, against all the odds, they actually won.
So let's just get right to the punchline, because it's a big one. The city of Tucson, Arizona just did something no other city has done before. They straight up said no to a massive Amazon data center. And this wasn't some quiet, bureaucratic decision. Oh no. This was a historic move that was driven entirely by a community that decided to rise up and make their voices heard.
And this quote from a local resident, man, it just says it all, doesn't it? It gets right to the absolute core of the whole conflict. You're in a desert, you're in the middle of a decades-long drought, so the question on everyone's mind was simple but so powerful. Where on earth is the water for this thing going to come from?
So how did we even get here? Well, like a lot of these stories, it all started with a secret. A huge, mysterious development that was only known by its cryptic codename, Project Blue.
Now, on paper, here's who was running the show. You had a developer called Beale Infrastructure, and they were backed by a $30 billion investment firm called Blue Owl, so a lot of money involved. And they were working quietly behind the scenes with county officials to get this huge 290-acre piece of land rezoned for some mysterious, secret client. And here's the key, the one little bureaucratic step that this whole thing hinged on. It's a process called annexation. See, the land was technically just outside the city limits, so the developer needed Tucson to officially pull it inside its borders. And why would they do that? One reason and one reason only, to get access to the city's water.
You know, for the longest time, nobody knew who this project was actually for. The whole deal was wrapped in so much secrecy, and that, of course, just made residents super suspicious. It actually took a local journalist who started digging through public information requests to finally blow the whole thing wide open.
And that secret client, drumroll please, none other than Amazon Web Services. And just like that, everything changed. This wasn't about some random developer anymore. This was about one of the most powerful tech companies on the entire planet wanting to set up shop right in their backyard.
Okay, and this slide, this is where things get really juicy. On the one hand, you have all these big, flashy promises. $250 million in tax revenue, 3,000 jobs. But then you look at the actual legally binding contract, and the only thing they were really on the hook for? A measly 75 permanent jobs. That's it. Which brings us to the one resource that became the flashpoint for this entire conflict. You guessed it, water.
This was it. This was the question that mattered. For a data center of this size, the amount of resources it would need was just mind-boggling. And in a city where every single drop of water counts, residents started asking if this was a price they were really willing to pay.
I mean, just take a second and really look at these numbers. The data center would need 600 megawatts of power. To put that in perspective, that's enough to power every single home in the entire city of Tucson. It needed a brand new 18-mile-long pipeline built from scratch, and it would drink up over 6% of the city's entire supply of reclaimed water. The scale is just wow. And I love how this local water policy expert put it. This wasn't really a technical question about whether the water physically existed. No, it was a values question. It was about deciding, as a community, what is the most important use of this incredibly precious resource. So you've got this secret deal. You've got these huge environmental questions. What happens next? Well, the community did not stay quiet. They got organized and they started pushing back hard. The main battleground for this fight became the local town hall meetings. Now, these were supposed to be these quiet little informational sessions. They weren't. They quickly turned into these tense, fiery events where citizens were standing up, they were angry, and they were demanding real answers. And then there was this moment. I mean, you can just imagine the tension in the room. A resident gets up and calls out the developer's representative, pointing out her past work for Meta and connecting it to another community's bad experience with a data center. The room just erupted. Any trust that was left, it was completely gone.
And this slide really boils the whole conflict down, right? On one side, you have the community, who feel like they've been totally betrayed by the process, and they're chanting, "Let us vote." On the other side, you have the county supervisor who greenlit the land deal, basically saying, hey, you elected us to make these decisions for you.
All of this tension was just building and building, and it all led to one final, decisive showdown at City Hall.
And just look at how fast this all went down. It's incredible.
It all kicks off on a Monday with that super tense town hall. Then, in the next few days, the news about Amazon breaks and the story just explodes. By the time vote day rolls around, you've got massive protests completely surrounding City Hall. The pressure was on.
And then came the moment of truth. In a move that I don't think anyone really saw coming, the Tucson City Council sided with the residents. The vote came in, and it was unanimous. They killed Project Blue. You could hear the crowd outside just go wild. The community had actually won.
So, the project is dead, at least for now. But what does this one local victory really mean when you look at the bigger picture?
Well, this is a huge deal. This isn't just some small-town squabble. It's actually one of the biggest rejections of a data center project in the entire country. It shows this growing tension between big tech, who wants to expand everywhere, and the small towns that are being asked to host them. And it's a massive warning shot to other cities. Don't get trapped in a race to the bottom for these bad deals.
But, even with this amazing victory, there's a really important note of caution here. As one environmentalist in the story put it, you never really have a permanent victory. You always have to be vigilant. The fight to protect these resources is never truly over.
And that leaves us with this final, really critical question. Because as this AI revolution just keeps accelerating, the demand for data is going to explode. And that means huge decisions are going to have to be made about our most precious resources, things like water and power. And the question that Tucson forces all of us to ask is, who should get the final say? The corporations or the communities?